So look around. We live in an era of just unprecedented speed, right? Answers are literally just a prompt away. But in this mad rush to generate outputs and move on to the next thing, we've got to ask ourselves a pretty serious question. Are we losing the fundamental ability to think deeply? Are we trading true understanding for, well, just mere convenience? Let's get into it.
Okay, let's kick this off with a pretty stark warning from the legendary physicist Richard Feynman. He said, "The first principle is that you must not fool yourself, and you are the easiest person to fool." And wow, is that relevant today. In our modern rush for instant answers, our shiny new technological shortcuts might be doing exactly that, fooling us into thinking we understand systems that we actually don't.
Act 1. The Trap of Vibe Coding. To really grasp this modern crisis of cognition, we need to talk about a massive trend going on right now called vibe coding. It's this wild paradigm shift where developers are generating wildly complex, functional systems just by tossing natural language prompts at an AI. They're totally bypassing the intermediate layers of architectural reasoning, the hard stuff like formal state machines or data transformation pipelines. So what happens? Engineers are shifting from being active creators to basically just spectators. They're simply verifying AI-generated outputs.
And here's where it gets tricky. Notice the contrast between doing and knowing. This perfectly illustrates what we call epistemological debt. Now, technical debt like messy code, you can see that. Epistemological debt is entirely invisible. It's this widening gap between the functional output a system spits out, the doing, and the human engineer's actual understanding of that underlying logic, the knowing. It is so easy for novices to overestimate their grasp of AI-generated logic because, hey, the output looks syntactically correct, and it works. But the AI is just acting as a mask over all that underlying complexity.
The real danger here? By offloading all our logic, we are totally skipping what researchers call the cognitive gym. That grueling but absolutely necessary process of logical derivation where our deep, tacit knowledge is actually built. Because we skip the gym, we end up creating these incredibly fragile black box systems. And look, everything works totally fine until it doesn't. Until some novel, catastrophic failure hits. And when it does, the human maintainer is just completely incapable of fixing it because they have the what, the code, but they've completely lost the why.
Act 2. Tesla's Virtual Mental Laboratory.
So, what's the antidote to all this modern rushing and epistemological debt? Well, we have to look back at one of the greatest minds in history, Nikola Tesla. Tesla deeply believed that every great invention begins in the mind. He once said, "When I get an idea, I start at once building it up in my imagination and operate the device in my mind." For Tesla, imagination wasn't just daydreaming. No, it was a rigorous, unforgiving, private virtual laboratory. He literally tested and stressed his machines mentally before a single physical part ever existed. Let's break down his anti-trial and error process, because it is fascinating. It's basically 4 steps. First, initial visualization, building a complete mental image. Second, mental simulation, running experiments under different conditions entirely in his head. Third, systematic refinement, fixing the flaws mentally. And finally, physical verification. The AC induction motor is a stunning example of this. Tesla didn't just stumble onto it. He mentally simulated and perfected the rotating magnetic fields of that motor for 6 long years before he ever built a physical prototype.
This is exactly why Tesla's method is the ultimate cognitive gym. While everyone else was relying on super costly physical trial and error, just tossing parts onto the scrap heap, Tesla did all the agonizing mental heavy lifting up front. Because he forced his imagination to push back and actually obey the laws of physics, the systems he built perfectly matched his mental models. There was zero epistemological debt in Nikola Tesla's mind.
Act 3. The Danger of Analogy. So how do we actually capture some of that rigor today? To frame our daily problem solving, let's borrow a fantastic concept from writer Tim Urban, the cook versus the chef. When we think by analogy, which, let's be honest, is what most of us do, we act like the cook. The cook just follows existing recipes, relying on past experiences or industry customs, maybe making tiny incremental updates. But the chef? The chef relies on first principles thinking. They understand the raw properties of the ingredients, and they invent entirely new solutions from scratch, totally unbound by any existing recipes.
And that right there is the essence of first principles thinking. Tracing all the way back to Aristotle and later René Descartes, it's essentially a physics-based view of the world. It demands that you deconstruct a problem by asking yourself, okay, what are we absolutely sure is true? You boil things down to the most fundamental, scientifically certain truths, and you flat out stop accepting industry common sense.
Let's look at how this creates real-world innovation. Take Elon Musk's SpaceX. Back in 2002, the aerospace industry's analogous thinking was that a rocket launch just inherently cost around $65 million. That's just the recipe. But Musk acted like the chef. He deconstructed the rocket down to its fundamental truths, its raw materials, aerospace-grade aluminum, titanium, copper. When he priced those out on the commodity market, he realized a shocking truth. Those raw materials were only 2% of the typical price. The other 98%? Just a bloated supply chain and lazy, analogical thinking.
He applied that exact same first principles logic to Tesla's electric vehicle batteries. Industry common sense at the time dictated that battery packs would always cost $600 per kilowatt hour. But by breaking the battery down to its constituent materials, your cobalt, nickel, aluminum, carbon, Musk found the spot market value was actually only $80. By optimizing for the function and ditching the historical form, he paved the way for an unbelievable 80% drop in price.
Act 4. Let imagination lead.
You see, true innovation absolutely demands that we tear down assumed forms and reconstruct them from scratch. To practice this, let's walk through a famous Socratic thought experiment from military strategist John Boyd. He asks us to take three seemingly unrelated vehicles and just completely deconstruct them into their basic parts. Okay, so we have a motorboat that breaks down into a motor, a hull, and skis. We have a military tank that's metal treads, armor plates, and a gun. And a bicycle, handlebars, wheels, and a seat.
Now, what happens when we let our imagination reconstruct those raw pieces? We get this magical synthesis. By combining the bike's handlebars and seat, the tank's metal treads, and the boat's motor and skis, boom, you invent a snowmobile. It brilliantly proves the power of abandoning the previous form so you can optimize for a completely new function.
Act 5. Reclaiming the cognitive gem.
We started all this by looking at the modern anxieties of AI, debt, and vibe coding, and we contrasted that with disciplined, foundational thinkers. As Nikola Tesla believed, every great invention begins in the mind. Before building his ideas, he mentally visualized and refined them first. This explainer is a reminder that imagination, patience, and deep thinking are absolutely powerful tools for creativity. In a world demanding fast, automated outputs, the most radical thing you can do is resist, slow down, think deeply, let your imagination lead the way.
And I want to leave you with a lingering question to reflect on regarding your own daily problem-solving habits. In the rush toward the future, are you doing the heavy lifting to build unbreakable mental models, or are you just borrowing someone else's recipe? Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning, keep deconstructing, and I'll catch you next time.